If you've seen my previous videos on this, you know I find the argument compelling that Karen Read was framed. But it's important to always try to play things from both sides. The county DA insists Read accidentally ran over her boyfriend, Boston cop John O'Keefe, and left the scene of the accident, apparently unaware she ran him over. He's seen the motions filed by Read's defense, and he's sticking by the charges. He's no doubt also seen what the defense intends to argue. For the defense argument to hold up, we're looking at a pretty big conspiracy involving at least 11 witnesses inside the home, some of them cops. It requires a corrupt state trooper who handled the investigation, and seemingly the chief of police in Canton, and maybe the medical examiner and the EMS first responder, Katie. That's a big conspiracy. And the bigger a conspiracy gets, the less likely it is to be true. So let's try to look skeptically at the defense case and see if it holds up. In my last video, I asked the defense this: where is the cell phone data from Karen Read that shows what time her car pulled away from the house? Do they have that data? Do they believe it's been manipulated in some way? Because until we have that data, we have to wonder why the defense is withholding it. Officer O'Keefe stopped moving at 12:32. Either that's the time he was run over or struck by Read's vehicle, or that's the time he collapsed into the snow after staggering out, gravely wounded from inside the house, or that's the time his body was carried out from inside the house. If the cell phone data shows Read drove away before 12:32, the charges must be dropped immediately, because there'd be no doubt that she was not there and O'Keefe was still inside the house. However, if the data shows she was still parked there, it is a problem for the defense theory. So let's weigh the options from the point of view that the data will show that she was still there when O'Keefe stopped moving at 12:32. It's possible he was beat up, staggered out towards the road, and Read never saw him. As he got near the car, she did her three-point turn and somehow ran him over. Not sure how likely that is, since she was waiting to see if he came back, but it's possible. There'd be tire marks visible on his clothing, wouldn't there? So I guess the prosecution's theory is that during her three-point turn, she somehow hit him hard enough to kill him. That all seems hard to believe, but that's the prosecution's theory. And as we'll see, almost certainly, we're going to have to accept some very unlikely things, whatever side you believe. So let's leave that on the table. What about the theory being pushed by Turtle Boy and perhaps Karen Read's lawyers that he was carried out by his killers after they had beat him up and left him for dead? Well, if Read was still parked there, I'm going to say no. If the guys inside had beat him up to within an inch of his life, they wouldn't carry him out with Read sitting parked there. They'd wait till she left, then carry the body out. So the cell phone data should tell us a lot. Now, there are a lot of things raised by the defense that do look very suspicious, but it is possible that there are other explanations, right? A big thing is the fact that Jennifer McCabe searched for how long it takes for someone to die in the cold. According to the info Read's lawyers were recently given by the state police, that search by her took place at about 2:30 a.m. Is that accurate? If it is, it's close to game over for McCabe and the conspirators. But is it accurate? We've seen copies of the motion filed by the defense which show the document with her search data. I don't see how there could be confusion, but I guess we have to wait and see what the prosecutor says. Hopefully we'll know more on May 3rd. Could there be any plausible reason for McCabe to make that weird search at 2:30 a.m.? As far as we know, at that time, McCabe supposedly believed O'Keefe was home in bed. Read didn't call McCabe to say O'Keefe was missing until around 5 a.m. But Read was calling O'Keefe all through the morning looking for him. Did she call or text someone else who could have called McCabe? For example, let's say she contacted someone before 2:30 and that person contacted McCabe, then McCabe could have been concerned about O'Keefe walking home in the snow. It's a stretch. They should have all of McCabe's messages now. And even if McCabe did find out earlier, say around 2:30, that O'Keefe was missing, if he hadn't been in a fight, there was really no danger of him dying in the cold just because he walked 3 miles home. So even if McCabe got those messages, that's a really weird thing to be searching for, isn't it? Another thing that troubles me about the defense argument is that it's just so hard to imagine the conspirators being so sophisticated in their actions to frame Read, so detailed. I know there were veteran cops involved, but still, these people were drunk and they're not master criminal minds. For example, McCabe texted O'Keefe the word hello at 12:31. It was at 12:32 that O'Keefe's phone last moved. The data shows him leaving the house at 12:30. So McCabe was texting him hello almost at the same moment he was either dying on the lawn or being struck by Reed. Let's take a closer look at the overall sequence there. At 12:14, they were leaving the bar and O'Keefe texted McCabe, "Where to?" She replied with the address. At 12:18, and this is the official report filed by State Trooper Proctor, O'Keefe called to ask which house. McCabe claimed she saw Reed's black SUV pull up while she was inside the house. Presumably, in her version of events, that's when she texted hello. But again, that was at 12:31, when O'Keefe was either dying on the lawn or about to be struck by Reed's SUV. At 12:40, she sent another text, "Pull up behind me." At that point, O'Keefe had been lifeless on the lawn for 8 minutes. O'Keefe's phone tracked his steps. It seems to show him walking to the house and entering around 12:20 and going up and down 3 flights of stairs. Honestly, it's hard to make any sense of this from McCabe's point of view, unless she knows O'Keefe is on the lawn and she's creating a false trail of breadcrumbs. However, we do have to try to see things from McCabe's side and see if it could make sense, because it almost defies possibility that McCabe could think this fast on her feet, even with help, to cover up a murder. If O'Keefe was beat up inside the house, it happened between 12:20 and 12:30. Maybe he staggered out gravely wounded. Maybe they carried him out. But it seems unbelievable that McCabe was already trying to create her trail of breadcrumbs with texts meant to throw investigators off. To me, it seems if she witnessed a murder, she'd be hysterical and still drunk. But she thinks to make those texts right at that moment? Maybe one of the guys took her phone and did it for her. Wow, these guys were thinking fast. So is there any way to make the prosecution's theory sensible regarding these messages? If McCabe is telling the truth about seeing the SUV pull up, that would have been around 12:18 or 12:19. Why text hello at 12:31? Well, maybe the hello was supposed to have a question mark at the end. For example, what if O'Keefe walked up to the house and was so drunk he couldn't figure out where the door was? So he walked around the house, then all the way back to Karen's SUV. That would have taken him, I guess, 11 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. Maybe that accounts for as many steps, even the stairs, if the app on his phone confused hills with stairs. So by 12:31, McCabe, wondering where he is, texts him, "Hello?" And 9 minutes later, still confused why O'Keefe hasn't come in yet, she texts him again to say, "Just pull up behind me." That again seems to be a stretch, but does it offer a possible innocent explanation for those texts at 12:31 and 12:40? Well, since I'm stretching things to fit, I'm going to need both hands for this next bit. According to Proctor's report, McCabe observed Karen's black SUV move from the initial place the vehicle was stopped on the street near the driveway, then proceed to the left side of the property. Now, this is all but impossible to make sense of with the prosecution theory, because if McCabe is telling the truth, she's describing the moment Reed ran over O'Keefe or hit him. She's essentially saying, she didn't see O'Keefe, but she did see Reed make her 3-point turn. But we know O'Keefe stopped moving at 12:32. If Reed hit him, it was at 12:32, and certainly no later than that. Why was McCabe texting him then at 12:40 to say, "Pull up behind me"? Then she saw Reed leave around 12:32. If Reed was doing a 3-point turn at 12:32, that's when she left, isn't it? McCabe would have seen her leave. Then why text O'Keefe 8 or 9 minutes later to say, "Pull up behind me"? The only way it works is kind of if Reed ran over O'Keefe at 12:32 during a 3-point turn and then remained parked there till at least 12:40, and that's when McCabe texted, "Pull up behind me." I mean, that seems incredibly unlikely, but we shouldn't rule anything out at this stage. Let's look at a few more things. The app on O'Keefe's phone, as we said, seems to show him going into the house and remaining there 10 minutes, going up and down the stairs 3 times. How accurate is that? As I said, is it possible he walked around the house and never went in? Or maybe he walked up and down those 4 steps that are right in front of the house that lead to the front door, and he was ringing the bell but not going in? Is it possible O'Keefe went inside the home and none of the 11 guests, and there were probably more than 11, none of those people saw him, including McCabe, who was waiting for him? Again, it's a reach, but that's what trials are for. Experts on that data will be brought in. Another mystery is the broken taillight. It shows how frustrating and complex evidence can be, especially if one side is arguing that investigators were corrupt. Video shows Reed trying to back out of her driveway a couple of hours after getting home. She was going out to look for O'Keefe. It clearly shows her, backing into O'Keefe's car parked in the driveway. She bumped it with the exact same taillight the prosecutors say broke when she hit O'Keefe. There's no question she hit O'Keefe's car with that taillight. But did it break then? Or was it already broken? Maddening, right? The prosecution's theory requires a pretty big coincidence where Reed backed into that taillight and earlier hit O'Keefe with that same taillight. But I guess coincidences do happen, and that's just another argument the prosecution is going to have to make. The defense theory seems to be that someone part of the conspiracy inspected Reed's car that day, saw the broken taillight, and exploited that to create evidence at the death scene. Wow. Wow. Is the conspiracy that sophisticated? What would they have done if Reed hadn't backed into O'Keefe's car and broke her taillight, if that's when she broke it? The initial search of the scene was done by Canton police. They did a thorough search using a leaf blower to scoop up evidence. This turned up a broken beverage glass, but no shards from the taillight. Only later, after the state police had taken Reed's car into custody, did a state police evidence unit come back and find a few pieces of taillight glass. It gets stranger. From what it sounds like, this glass could not be matched to the model and make of Karen's SUV. That was a problem for the prosecution. Then a miracle occurred. Almost a week later, the Canton police chief happened to be driving down that road when he saw evidence of more broken taillight. Wow. He called the state police so they could take in this new evidence. And this glass turned out to be just what they needed to make a match with Reed's type of vehicle. Was the chief planting evidence? Did someone else plant it and tell him to go find it? The chief did contact a reporter tweeting about the story the day the story broke to ask him to drop the homeowner's name from this report. The homeowner was influential Boston cop Brian Albert. So if nothing else, we can see the chief had a little bit of an agenda. But manufacturing evidence for a chief of police? I don't know. Maybe the snow just melted more over time and the glass became visible. A little odd that the chief happened to be out driving that way. The same chief that's contacting reporters and trying to hide the homeowner's name. But that's going to be an uphill battle for the defense to prove. Here's another thing. Canton cops initially investigating the scene found a broken beverage glass, as we mentioned. Here's the interesting part. We're told that when they first found this, they considered it the murder weapon. So looking at Keefe dead on the lawn with a face that seemed beat up and multiple deep lacerations on his arm, the first cops on the scene thought he'd been murdered. But they decided not to investigate the home on whose lawn the body had been found. Certainly McCabe or Reed must have told the cops that's why O'Keefe was there in the first place, to attend an after-hours party in the house. Did the Canton cops know who lived there? If you don't think they did, boy, there's a bridge in Brooklyn you'd be just right for. The deputy chief lived right across the street. Brian Albert was a Boston cop. His brother was a Canton cop, and his other brother was on the board of selectmen. So these cops knew who lived there. Did they find it strange that no one from inside the house came out to investigate the dead Boston cop on their lawn? Even though Albert's sister-in-law was out there and had driven Reed in her car? Right? So Brian's wife had no interest in coming out either to see her sister who was outside at the scene? Those Canton cops who believed O'Keefe had been murdered had no suspicion about why no one from inside the house was coming out? And they had no desire to go inside the house and see if there was anything unusual or question anyone about whether O'Keefe ever went inside the house? Of course, eventually Brian Albert would be questioned. But in that moment, right when any cop would be investigating that house and the residents, nothing. Boy, would I like to question those cops Might need some truth serum though. Someone made the situation pretty clear to them. Don't go near that house if you know what's good for you. One last thing. The EMS firefighter that responded at 6 a.m. said Reed repeated several times, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." Well, there are three possibilities on this. One is that this firefighter, his name is Katie, is in on the conspiracy. It seems kind of crazy to me. Or two, the conspirators actually convinced Reed that she ran O'Keefe over. That's Turtle Boy's theory. I think that might be the defense's theory. The third possibility, I guess, is that Reed really did hit him. So no matter what, we're going to be forced to accept something that for now seems pretty unlikely. Hey, please click subscribe and notify to stay up on the series. If I make any mistakes, please correct me in the comments. Or if you have your own theories, massholes welcome.